All right, so Michael Van Dyne here with Muscle Mobility, and we got IFBB Pro Chad Merchant here. Want to do a demonstrational video of one of the multiple ways that we release the subscap into the teres major. Chad is a pro bodybuilder. He does a lot of volume training. He is constantly pumping. He's that machine. Things coming in and out. So as he does that, we're looking for volume. But unfortunately, with that kind of training and that intensity, we also get some restrictions. So we get to where our bodies just kind of naturally create a little bit of inflammation when the muscle's under stress. And there's always forms of guarding. There's always forms of muscle compensation that steps in when certain areas get restricted, causing lack of range of motion. And that's with everybody. So the technique we're going to show today is a way that we approach into the subscap, releasing the teres major. But I want to talk a little bit about that first. Chad is, he's a pro bodybuilder, but that doesn't mean that this technique isn't for everyone. Any level of lifting, athletics, but even people that work at a desk, that are always working in front of them. I do this same technique for a lot of people on their mouse hand because of how the body is compensating. I'll explain that a little bit more. This technique is for people, if you're on your device a lot, basically if you're in front of you holding anything or trying to do anything where you reach in front of you, which let's face it, most of the time anybody is doing some form of working in front of them. So the subscap and teres major, when you look at the shoulder in general, there are multiple muscles that come into play to help support, assist, or even stabilize the movement of the shoulder. So this is not your shoulder. This is, a lot of people, yes, it is your shoulder, it's a part of your shoulder, but when it comes to therapy and helping the shoulder function and move correctly, this is not the only area that we approach, okay? We approach the pec major, the pec minor. We approach everything in the clavicle. The clavicle is supposed to glide out of the socket when in rotation, in the rotator cuff. We need to approach the trap that goes up to the back of the skull. There's multiple neck muscles. We need everything in the posterior side, everything that's surrounding the scap, the supraspinatus, the infraspinatus, teres major, minor, the lat, rhomboids. There's a ton of muscles, the bicep, the tricep. All of these muscles are going to affect how the shoulder is properly supposed to function. So when we're dealing with people that are working in front of us or that's working out constantly, some of the two, I wouldn't say biggest muscles that can manipulate or put the shoulder into an area to where it doesn't function correctly, but two of very important muscles that aren't always approached is the subscap and the teres major, and the pec minor as well. So we're going to show you that technique today because those muscles are really in there to form different movements, but they're also huge stabilizers. So if you imagine, if you're working out in front of you, that subscap and that teres major is tight in some form. And what happens is, being tight for so long, it gets used to that, and it starts what we call the drawing effect or guarding effect, where that muscle almost shortens and it no longer is able to open up as much. So we go from reaching here to being able to only reach here, so on and so on. But also, those muscles are used to assist in like a lat pull or a high pull or a pull up. And I have people all the time after a back workout, they'll go to do a press workout or an upper body chest workout or shoulder workout 2 days later, and they're like, man, my shoulder is really, really hurting on the top, or it's hurting up in the bicipital groove, or where the bicep tendon comes around and attaches into the front. And one of the things I asked was, did you recently do any kind of high pulls or any kind of back workout? And mostly it's yes. And that's another really good reason to approach inside the shoulder or the subscap into the armpit versus just approach everything on the top, because that's all connected. And if you imagine, so I'm going to pull his arm back, and you got your subscap and you got your teres major that sits way down deep in here. I can actually feel his pretty easily. It's pretty tight. What those muscles do is they start to guard. So if he's been doing a lot of pulls, those muscles start to kick in, they get really, really tight, and they start holding that shoulder, almost restricting its range of motion. So the next time when he goes to press, it's doing a pull effect and it's causing a pinch sensation in his shoulder, causing pain. So a lot of people recognize superficial or superior and anterior shoulder pain. They recognize that as something's wrong with my rotator cuff, which it is becoming into an impingement, but typically it's caused from what's actually behind the shoulder. So that's what we're going to focus on today. So I want to talk a little bit, again, this technique is utilized for anybody. You don't have to be just a bodybuilder. This is something that will help people do their day-to-day activities, relieving stress and tension. You know, I have people all the time telling me that they didn't realize how restricted they were after having this done. And it literally does improve the way that you hold yourself. When we have a shoulder issue, it tends to travel to our neck, or it also tends to travel down our back, causing back issues, headaches, neck pain, so on and so on. So very important to have this technique done. So something else I want to talk about is I see it a lot out there where people just don't understand some of the benefits to releasing myofascial tissue before this. So they talk about scraping. We do the SASM technique and the Graston here. Most of us are all certified on it here. And we've been educated to understand why myofascial release is so important. I'm not going to do any myofascial release today on Chad. We've done it multiple times in the past and it does help. But to save time for this video, I'm not going to. But when you're releasing myofascial, you can get into all the muscles. You can pull this back. You can get into the pec minor in here. You can hit the subscap. I'm not going to really be able to really get into the teres major with this. But what this does is, as you're using this tool, and I'm going to give a good video on this later on this week and describe exactly how important myofascial is. But this is, imagine your muscles are covered with, you know, when you go to the market and you go to the meat market and you buy a packet of meat, and that packet of meat has this plastic film over it that's sealing it down. You could push on that packet of meat all you want. You can push on it, and it's always going to go back right to where it was. Myofascial that's over your muscle tissue is literally pressing down just like that, and it's really not allowing that muscle to move any different than the way that it was packaged. You open that package up, and that meat becomes pliable, movable. You can manipulate it. You can change the shape of it and all that. That's really kind of what myofascial release is doing. We're taking tools to break down the myofascial tissue, relieving nodules and knots and buildup, and sometimes where our muscle fibers stick together, and which is the knots and stuff. We're actually going to release that myofascial tissue to what I call allowing the muscle to breathe, which really is just circulation. It's allowing blood to get into that muscle quicker, allowing blood to get into that muscle easier with less restriction, but it's also allowing that muscle to expand. Myofascial tissue, especially under high intense workouts or something that's repetitive, becomes tighter and tighter, and it restricts that muscle more and more. So myofascial release is really, really important. And with bodybuilders, a lot of the time, I will use that technique first before I do this. I also want to talk about cupping. Cupping is a decompression therapy. A lot of us here are certified on cupping on multiple levels. I've been certified internationally for sports and medical, and cupping is an amazing technique. It is a decompression therapy versus a compression therapy. But what I would recommend to anyone out there that is a therapist that is doing this, or a manual therapist, a chiropractor, doctor, PT, anything, once you get this muscle released and this area released, that's when you pull out the cups. Why? Because you can use cupping therapy for stretching. You can use it, we do all the time. You can use it for multiple things, but if I'm going to manually open all of this up and I get this tissue to relax and his body to start relaxing, allowing those muscles to truly release, I'm going to want to put these on there and start pulling blood into that tissue. So I like to use these as a finisher. After I get everything where I want it, everything opened up, you know, I will go ahead and cup. I will cup into the subscap, I will cup the pec, I'll cup parts of the shoulder, sometimes I'll even move them. But what am I really doing? I've got everything opened up, and now I'm using these as a tool just to pull good, healthy blood in there. No matter how you look at it, I mean, a lot of times in the medical field, you'll hear doctors talk about our body as we hold waste. We do hold waste. We are a machine. We have parts that are constantly moving in and out. Our blood is constantly moving in and out. So some people don't like the word toxins, but really they can be forms of toxins that can build up into your body. It's simple science and the anatomy on how the body works. As something goes in and out, debris can be left behind. No different than the oil in your motor. As the pistons are going up and down, they can leave a little bit of debris behind, which is why your oil becomes dirty. No difference in the body. So we want to use this cup to pull in great circulation into the areas that we released, allowing good, healthy blood to flow in there, and also to help get rid of the bad, to help get it out of our system, allow our lymphatic system to work even better, and get rid of some of those toxins that we've built up, or that, waste, as they like to call it in the medical term, which is, it truly is a form of waste because it's been left behind, and there's nothing wrong with getting the bad stuff out. So I would recommend using these after. Again, to save time on the actual therapy part of this, I'm not going to show that today or demonstrate that today, but I definitely would recommend to any therapist out there, start with some scraping, some Sastum, some Graston, and then finish with some cups, just allowing that body to move even better.